zombie scrolling. Okay.
So do you have a mic? If we're going to do this.
Do you have a mic for him?
It will connect.
It will connect.
Are we close enough?
Yeah, I think so. I think it picks up just around here. So
What is zombie scrolling?
zombie scrolling. Okay, so zombie scrolling is something you probably did today. Okay.
Go on.
Did you at any point today, maybe when you woke up or maybe you were on the train, just randomly scrolling through social media?
1 second. That's sorry.
You escaped that.
I'm on YouTube all the time. I'm on the net, but I
Okay.
just ducked the whole iPhone thing because I figured
Okay.
pound for pound it might be a bad idea.
Sure. Do you do that on, say you're on your laptop, do you find yourself scrolling one video after another sometimes?
Yeah, on YouTube constantly. I coast
Constantly,
it.
yeah. So zombie scrolling is the idea that on social media,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to things which are high in dopamine triggers, like Twitter, right? It's much easier to get addicted to Twitter. What basically we do is we go through this motion of scrolling, but we don't know what we're looking for.
Sure.
And we just move from one thing to another aimlessly. So we're in a zombie mode and we're scrolling.
Yeah.
And on average, we can do about 300 feet worth of scrolling a day. Well, you don't have the phone, so maybe you perhaps is
I
slightly
still
less.
scroll through music and debating
Debates
stuff
and
stuff,
yeah, exactly right. So the problem with zombie scrolling is it can destroy your ability to have willpower. What it does is basically this. So have you ever had pure sugar cane?
No.
You know okay,
know,
you must
yeah.
have seen it.
Yeah, I haven't
Right.
had
Okay.
it.
Okay. So getting that sugar from the sugar cane is actually quite difficult. So what happens is you peel it off, you use your teeth. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of grind, and then you get some sugar.
Yeah.
So the amount of sugar that you're going to get from a sugar cane is it's very difficult to get that amount unless you're going to get it in a processed form. So if you go to say Starbucks or something and they're giving you sugar from fruits, they'll process everything in a way that you can drink it quite easily.
Yeah.
If you actually had to go to the fruit itself, like the sugar cane, it would take a lot more effort, it'd be a lot more laborious and difficult, and you'd only take in a bit of sugar.
Sure.
Okay, so that's the difference between the two.
Okay, so this is a metaphor.
This is a metaphor, for the dopamine that we get when we're scrolling. So what usually happens is we'll get a dopamine spike when you achieve something, when you're about to achieve something. Say it's a degree or you want to go on a hike and you've completed it.
Yeah.
What we replace that with is something artificial. So rather than the sugar cane and the effort which brings you the sugar, what we do is we just scroll aimlessly and we get these dopamine spikes.
Yeah.
So our dopamine threshold goes higher and higher and higher. Then when we stop and we want to focus on something, we want to read something, what actually happens is we can't focus anymore.
Okay.
We lose the willpower to actually concentrate. And one of the aspects of social media scrolling is it shows you, especially with young people when they're on things like Instagram, it shows you people that are more beautiful than you, more healthier than you, more richer than you, high in social status. Yeah.
I think you're preaching to the converted.
Okay.
I mean, yes, carry on, but
Okay.
I'm agreeing
Well,
with you.
I was going to give the problem, reaction, and solution. So we have a problem. What is the normal reaction, and what I think is the solution? And I was going to compare the solution between Islam and atheism when it comes to this particular issue.
Run with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So we agree on the problem. Now the normal reaction.
Can I elaborate on the problem?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
of course. I'd love to
Do you
hear
know
your thoughts.
Jaron Lanier.
No.
He's one of the designers of virtual reality.
Okay.
You can see him talking on various podcasts. Very bright, interesting, nice guy. He says that the problem with the algorithm, which is underlying all of this stuff, is that for the first time, we're not just looking at adverts. Adverts are looking at us and studying us, And that the advert is just looking for a trigger. It's looking for when you respond to something it feeds you. And that the problem is that humans are hardwired to our negative instincts trigger instantly.
Yeah.
Our positive instincts take more time to gestate.
Yeah.
And therefore the algorithm naturally reacts to our negative emotions more, and it ends up exacerbating them. So just the algorithm isn't trying to do a bad thing, and no one planned it, but it's just in the nature of its programming that it's making us tap more and more into negative instincts. And this is insidious with the internet. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, because he himself isn't pointing the finger at any bad guy. He's just going, be aware we've locked ourselves into this cycle, and yes, you're right, you need to break it. So we concur on that.
Okay. I agree with you that sometimes these things happen incidentally. It's human nature mixing with the algorithm in a way that is detrimental, but it wasn't designed. However, there are instances where we have world governments who tune algorithms to damage other nations, but to make their own nations prosper. For example, the Chinese government, when it comes to TikTok, the TikTok that you get in outside of China, that you get in the United States, it's, you know, people dancing, doing silly things, and the algorithm is pushing that kind of thing. But in China, it's actually cool engineering tricks. Sure. It's actually, they don't want their nation to be, you know, watching people dance and do these silly types of things. So there is an element where you're correct, but there's also...
It can happen that governments will utilize it.
Yes, and especially, you have to remember, from an advertiser's point of view, they want you hooked on your phone.
Yeah.
They want you to scroll, because the more you scroll, the more money they get.
Can we concur then? There may be bad actors exploiting this, but even if there weren't bad actors, the algorithm in and of its own nature is still detrimental to your psyche if you're freebasing it.
Yeah.
Do we agree?
Yeah, we agree on that.
Right.
And what we can also agree, a common denominator here is human nature.
Yeah.
So human nature, you can bring out the worst aspects of it through social media.
Sure.
And one of the things I want to highlight is materialism, right? Yeah. So materialism, let's define it into subcategories. Mm-hmm. So it's the love of image, the love of looking a particular way, the love of status, having a particular social class that you belong to, and the third one is your wealth, the amount of money that you have.
Defining status as intrinsically connected with materialism.
I think
I'm not sure it's
okay. I believe status, the seeking of status, is a type of materialism.
Then I think maybe redefining terms to make them clearer in the beginning. I think you can be a I think the search for status. I like Jordan Peterson. Yeah, you know I'm a Peterson fan. The search for status is hardwired within us. We both agree we have human nature. We disagree on what it is, but we agree we have it. We're not postmodernists. And that the search for status is inevitable, and I think that would occur even in a non-materialist, non-capitalist framework. So I don't think they're quite as tightly bound as you think they are, but I know what you mean. They're often synonymous and go hand in hand.
Yeah, so maybe I need to define it a bit more deeply. Yeah. When it comes to the seeking of status, we as human beings, we like being respected, and the higher we are in the social hierarchy, the better we feel. Yeah. The more happy chemicals are released, like serotonin and dopamine.
Yeah, we might be deceiving ourselves sometimes. Don't get head rushes.
But then the extreme side of it, and the side which is quite detrimental, is when people link their social status to their self-worth. So you find people on Instagram who'll take 20 minutes just to take a perfect photo. Yeah. You'll find teenagers in depression because their social media posts aren't doing as well as they did in the past. Sure. Things like this, right? So that is a type of materialism. That's my point.
We pick a different word. We don't have to. I'm nitpicking.
Sure.
I mean,
okay.
What you're saying is it's cosmetic and superficial. Yes?
Yeah.
Can we agree on that?
Yeah, we do.
The internet makes things more cosmetic and more superficial, and then channels that. We have an inherent instinct for status, but it distracts our attention to superficial qualities of status rather than the more profound and important aspects of status.
And exactly. And the same thing can apply to the Islamic concept of worship. So we believe all human beings have a affinity, have a desire for worship. And we can misuse that by worshipping other human beings, making celebrities our guide, making our desires our God. We can make it into something positive by actually worshipping God. So it's the same instinct, but it's being misused in certain aspects and being properly used in certain aspects as well.
Are we on fitra? Are we talking fitra?
Yeah.
Because I'm a fan of fitra.
I
think fitra is a working concept.
Okay.
It's not specific to Islam. I hope we'll agree on that. I think fitra is common throughout numerous religions, and what it's saying is A, you have a nature, and B, that nature is at some level intrinsically good or moral. It has a moral compass built into it,
Yeah, it's broader than that, but I'll explain a little...
I'm looking, is that a common agreement? Could we agree on it to that extent?
Yeah, okay, so maybe if I explain it from a different perspective. So the fitra is not saying only Muslims have fitra, or only Muslims can speak about fitra. Fitra is I mean, the closest English definition would be an innate disposition. Yeah. So we believe an innate disposition existed before the prophets, like the Prophet Muhammad, or peace be upon him, or the Prophet Jesus, were even on earth. Right. That the fitra has always been there. It's something innate.
Now, I'm agreeing with you in principle, and I hope it's true. I'm not convinced it is, but I hope it is.
Sure.
And it seems like a tenable idea, and I like it.
Sure.
I think it's the best possible scenario.
Sure. I do want to make a distinction, though. The fitra is not an argument for God.
Correct.
The fitra is a paradigm from which a person looks at the world.
Yeah, it's your. Why are we then disagreeing? I would say it's your moral compass. It's your teleological and moral compass.
I think it's
your
broader
best
than.
self.
Yeah, I think it's more than moral.
Okay, can we agree that at minimum it's a moral compass? It may have more properties than that, but can we at least concur that one of its properties is that it gives you a
Absolutely,
moral compass? So we agree
absolutely,
to that
yeah,
degree.
absolutely. I mean, that is. I mean, you can't have a fitra without morality,
Excellent.
right? Okay.
I
Now,
think we disagree on some of its properties, but
sure,
we can agree on that.
sure. Now, for a long time in the sciences, as you know, what Peterson's been attacking is the standard social science model, right? The blank slate model. That we essentially don't have a human nature, we essentially don't have a fitra, we essentially don't have these innate dispositions. Everything is cultural, right?
That wouldn't be Darwinian, though, would it? In the Darwinian model, we do have a nature.
From an evolutionary psychology point of view, they do believe that there is a human nature and the blank slate model is wrong. They do believe that.
Right, so in that sense, you guys, theists and atheists, Darwinian atheists, are in the same camp, which is interesting because the postmodernists are not, and I think that line is very important.
That's a very important observation you made because that is true.
Find the common ground.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
work with it as much as you can.
Yeah, there is a commonality there, but the difference would be the causal explanations on both accounts would be different. So, say for example, someone like Steven Pinker, they would look at our affinity to be good or our belief in God, and he'll give it a explanation in terms of natural selection. Sure. What we would do is we'd give it an explanation in terms of God. So that's where the distinction would be. But the phenomena itself would be observed by both camps.
So we agree on the phenomena, we agree on that common ground, we're going to disagree on how we prescribe it.
Yeah.
I come from a platform where I think religion is primarily prescriptive, not descriptive. Sorry, so we describe its function differently, but I think actually description is secondary to the function of religion. But I don't want to open that debate, sorry.
Okay,
Go on the right.
sure, just a little question about that. So are you basically saying, in a way that religion is, if you like, metaphorically true but literally false? Because that isn't.
I think that occurs, and that can be okay, and that's not a reason to chuck your religion away at all.
Sure.
It's fine.
So would you subscribe to, say, the ideas of Brett Weinstein when he talks about this concept that we should treat religion as something good, not some
necessary fiction?
Yes. I mean, are you aware of his ideas?
Yeah, I think if we're talking that one, the idea of a necessary fiction, I think he uses, or Harris uses, the idea of a gun where you go, you should always act as though the gun has a bullet in, even when you know it isn't. It's a constructive fiction, which you know the gun hasn't got a bullet in, but you still act as though it does. And I think that's a useful metaphor.
Right.
So, yeah, I think religion is metaphorically very often true, including Islam. When it takes itself too literally, I think it becomes more problematic. And I think the conservative strand of Islam that I believe you represent, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe is taking it too far to its own detriment. But the core ideas, hopefully you can see we agree on. Certainly fitra, I think there's profound things to be defended here. And so I'm more in favour of a more progressive view of religion, which I know isn't your position.
I get that, but at the same time, you're subscribed to a particular school in that case, which is that you describe the phenomena in naturalistic terms, and therefore, like Weinstein and Pinker and others, you would actually be you'd be looking at the instrumental value of religion, but the intrinsic value you'd write off.
I've seen this, yeah, I can see how it looks that way, but I hope I'm squaring the circle and I'm not seeing it that way.
Sure.
I'm not saying that the utility of this grounds out in some kind of societal benefit at some terrestrial level. I believe something very different, but you know what? I appreciate you giving me time to expound on my views.
Because you sound really well thought out.
How
That's
about
why.
we cover your, because you came here with let's do your one first, and then if we get the space,
Sure,
we can do
sure.
mine.
But
And I'd
just
like to
hold
do
that thought then.
determinism,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
holding that thought.
Yeah, because I'm generally, because I learn a lot from you actually. I've had a few conversations. So, why I was talking about zombie scrolling earlier is because essentially there's aspects of human nature which are accelerated, the negative aspects which are accelerated because of social media, and this leads to depression. Now, there's a lot of studies that show that social media is leading to depression, especially with young people.
Sure.
Now, I believe Islam is a solution to zombie scrolling, and I believe atheism or materialism or some sort of agnosticism actually makes it worse by not giving an answer.
It's a very general dichotomy. I see where you're coming from.
Okay.
I think it's possible to platform moral and teleological platforms from an atheistic platform like Harris does. I'm also a fan of Harris.
Right.
But I take your point.
Sure.
I think religion gives people teleology and meaning and purpose, and
Value.
that value is essential.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential in the heart of this.
Yeah.
I mean, fitra is a value judgment. It's all about value judgment.
Fitra gives you a value.
Okay, yeah. It's
To make
but
judgments.
it's in that dimension.
Yeah.
We agree.
Okay, we don't really disagreeing where you're about to see me take the argument. So, shall I extrapolate?
If your pitch is, are you better off dedicating more time to the 5 pillars and less time to scrolling? The answer is yes.
Okay.
Okay? If that's your point, yes.
Yeah, it is actually.
Okay, great. Because I think, as I said, prescriptively, that's religion's primary thing, and all the 5 pillars I think are very strong.
Okay.
I think you see them in other religions as well. I often respect greatly the way a lot of Muslims I see locally, they really are very diligent and they adhere. To pray 5 times a day is a significant thing for 10 years. So that's 2.5 years of your life. Yeah, I mean, to obey Ramadan and so on again requires diligence, and I think I think these prescriptions automatically illuminate and clarify one's perception, and they're common to numerous religions.
Sure. So, what trait do you think something like Ramadan brings out in Muslims, which can actually help them enlighten themselves in other areas of their life?
Well, as I said, I think the objective of fitra, in my sense, with a small f, is to see reality as clearly as possible. That's what religious pursuit is about. And when you deny yourself food for a while, you are subsuming yourself to a higher principle and using discipline, which is good for character and fitra. And simultaneously, you're realizing the value of the thing that you take for granted. That's the second thing, which makes you see reality more clearly, because you become blurred and immune to the reality and you see heightened things, so it resensitizes your vision. Thirdly, I think it helps you to empathize with people who are starving, because you go, oh, this is what it feels like. So on those 3 levels,
Sure.
It's an asset in whatever religion it's being applied,
Sure.
and it should be respected.
Okay. And no, that's a very good observation. I just wanted to add the Quranic paradigm on this, which is that something like fasting between morning and sunset, where you restrain yourself from food and water and other things that are normally allowed. The purpose of that is for you to have God mindfulness, to be God conscious. Because God consciousness is something that can destroy zombie scrolling. God consciousness is something that can stop, I believe, world wars. It can stop greediness in the world. It can stop people hoarding stuff during COVID.
Yeah.
And God consciousness, I believe, and I think Peterson says this, I could be wrong, but even if someone doesn't believe in God, the value of having God consciousness will make the world a better place.
Yeah, he says you are the value you act out, not the value that you describe, which again is why I'm saying it's prescriptive, not descriptive.
Right.
If you're describing yourself one way but acting another, the way you act is more indicative of where you're at than what you say. So my issues with religions tends to be is at generally the descriptive level and over-literalism.
Sure. Good. Now, just to add to this, I don't know whether you subscribe to this argument, but I'm just going to put forward this argument, right? So when in my talks, I talk about induction, underdetermination, problem of unconceived alternatives, how science is instrumental, but it doesn't give you absolutes. It doesn't give you truth. An atheist, a Darwinist in particular, may say something like, well, it works, so it's true. Okay? Now, no, I haven't completed the argument. But I don't agree with that argument.
Yeah.
However, somebody who says it works, therefore it's true, should be consistent logically, because if religion works, then it should also be true.
Agreed.
According to their logic.
Agreed.
What do you think of that?
I think their logic is flawed. I think they should say it works, therefore it has utility.
Sure.
Okay, I think the word truth needs defining.
Sure.
More, I think I'm about arguing for first principles, define your terms. I'm constantly aware how we don't define our terms well enough.
Yeah.
What we even mean by truth. Yeah. I mean,
Should we just stick to the correspondence theory of truth? That seems to be the most simplest to carry on the discussion.
No, I don't subscribe to the correspondence.
Oh, you don't?
theory.
Okay.
I think in a hierarchy of boxes that you'll tick, the correspondence theory comes below. Okay, my definition of truth at the moment is truth is that which illuminates hermeneutics in alignment with your fitra. Okay, now that sounds pretty
But
damn abstract. But I've been
from
working-
that definition, Allah is the truth.
Well, yeah, okay, it would align with that to a fair degree.
Yeah, it would.
I'm trying to go there.
Yeah, that's
I'm trying to crunch
interesting.
it down into a nice, brief, concise
Okay.
statement. And I think if you look at truth like that, then truth can be anywhere. Truth can be suddenly a noun, it can be a verb, it can be an adjective. It's whatever it is which helps you to align your vision. Whatever it comes from, it might come from noticing something beautiful, which is an adjective, yes? That might inspire me to see more clearly. It might come from seeing something be done. It might come from a noun, just the existence of something. It might come from the way something is done. So it becomes a far more amorphous property, and the function of truth becomes to translate reality, to help you to translate reality as clearly as possible. So that's how I'm defining it at the moment.
Sure.
Okay?
I don't subscribe to that pragmatic view of truth.
Okay.
I think that that's useful to look at certain problems. So for example, if someone's going through depression, it may be worth them exploring pragmatic truths and what works for them, but not necessarily something that's true. But for human beings to be intellectually satisfied, we want to know if the statements that we utter correspond to a reality which is objective. And I believe that that correspondence theory of truth is something we should talk about when it comes to God's existence.
I think
Because
it's in there, so I should mention.
Sure.
I think there's truth and then there's facts, and they're not the same thing. And Nietzsche would concur with this. I mean, I'm not saying a big Nietzsche fan, but I think unless you draw a clear distinction between a fact and a truth is connected, I think, with value judgments and consciousness, and it's more profound. Facts are just about brute reality.
Sorry, say that again. Truth is value.
You need a conscious mind before truth even comes into play. You need life. So in other words, I think for me, the universe. We're getting off your point. Okay, we're going through.
That's because you agreed with the general view,
No,
which
I love to go here. I just don't want to take you off your point.
No,
'Cause I want to show
but the thing,
respect to your
sure.
position.
But my point that I was making, you agreed with, which is that zombie scrolling is better to be.
Yeah, you're better off doing the 5 pillars.
5 pillars.
No matter whether you're an atheist or not. Okay, I think
So now we're talking about what is true, but yeah. So that I've already covered.
Between facts and truth, because my definition of truth only works if juxtaposed with facts. Facts are just eternal, brute realities and principles which describe the function of objects. Truth applies to subjects. You and I are subjects, yeah? In the absence of any subjects, I don't believe there are any values. Truth is about values. Facts are just about flat, it's what inevitably happens. It's the scientific world that science tries to look at. Science studies the laws of objects, religion studies the world of subjects.
Okay, I don't agree with that, but let's try and adjudicate the difference by an example. So that tree over there, that tree. Speaking about the tree from a first-person perspective, are we going to be dealing with facts or truths?
Both. They have to work in sync. So I think that truth can be derived from numerous environments, yeah? For example, you can get truth from fiction, which by definition isn't fact. But a lot of people have said, oh, there's great truth in fiction, yeah? You can read a book and get an insight, and it was never true, yeah? But you get truth, and that tells you how amorphous truth is. The one thing I think truth can't do is exist in contradiction to a fact. Facts are brute realities which are unavoidable, hardwired into the intrinsic laws of nature, which you and I agree exist. I mean, the only difference is you think God can intercede and affect the laws of nature, whereas I think they're the default.
Well, I think God sets the laws of nature.
Okay, but whether...
So it's not like God's violating the laws. It's God is anything that God has set in place, God can change. So it's not
So that's
an
where
intervention.
we disagree, but where we would agree is there are default laws of nature.
Yeah,
We would agree on that.
we would agree.
Okay, so
But
if
the
we
reason I
agree on
mentioned...
that, we can then study them. Like say the study of the default laws of nature is a study of facts, and you fly in the face of facts at your peril.
Yes, but your point about facts are only to do with objects, and subjects we're dealing with truth.
Yeah, truth is a far richer and more amorphous thing.
Okay, say something like 1 + 1 is 2.
Yeah.
You would say that's a fact,
Correct.
but
And
not a
I'd say
truth.
No, I'd say it's true as well, because if your fitra, for you to view 1 + 1 as equaling anything other than 2 would put you in contradiction with facts, which is not in accordance with your fitra. However, you'll be addressing other questions like what is good, which is not based on mathematical objective facts. It's a value judgment, and I think there is still an absolute answer to what is good. So we're on the same camp, we're not postmodernists.
Right, yeah.
But I'm hoping that there is. I don't know there is, but I'm hoping there are absolute moral directives, which is what your fitra points to. And that happens in the world of values
Okay.
and truth, which is a deeper arena.
Sure, but don't you think, since you mentioned absolute, like
We're driving the crowds away, you know.
Sorry?
We're driving the crowds away.
They're not interested.
It's just you and me having
Yeah,
a chat.
it is.
Oh, wrong. Leon, hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
So-
Actually, should we rebrief him on where we're at?
If you don't mind.
If he plugs in.
So,
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's absolutely
'cause
fine.
Leon is just, while he's setting up, I just like, might as well, do you mind if I plug him?
No,
'Cause
no
he's-
worries, no
You
worries.
know content over everything, yeah? He's been recording here for a number of years now,
Right,
and I only just chatting 2 weeks ago, I discovered he didn't even monetize his channel for the first 3 years, which means he came down here, he diligently filmed stuff, and he tries to be as objective. Are you getting this, Leon? Because I'm picking you up. Okay.
I think you were very active 3 years ago, right? 4 years ago. Yes, yes, I remember now. Is your symbol that one which,
your symbol?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the scribble. It makes
Yeah,
that
yeah,
scribbling
yeah,
sound.
scribble.
All right, I got it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, he
But
tries to
where have
be
you
as-
been last couple of years? You sort of disappeared.
Took a break. The COVID forced everyone to take a break. And then I just took an
Do you want to
extended
come on camera? I think you should give yourself a
Yeah,
plug,
man.
honestly.
Yeah, I'd like to.
I'm gonna make. Oh, shit.
Well, sorry, that was dumb.
Okay.
Shit.
They're not mine, but there
Good?
we go. Four. That way, is it? That works? I don't even know how to
I
manage
think
it.
so.
It's the other way around, actually, isn't it? That way.
I think it's this phone.
Oh, it's that way. You might be right. Sorry, my
Yeah.
bad.
Do you know who's
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's two of the brothers who are here. I'll have a look, see if I can
Is
find
this your
them.
camera?
No, I don't.
Whose cameras are these?
No idea.
These are
All these.
Mansoor and Hashim. I think that one goes in that one.
Should I go and get somebody?
Yeah.
I'll go grab them. I'll see where they are at.
Should we hold for a minute?
Yeah, yeah. But I would be interested to get his thoughts as well.
Yeah, well actually,
'Cause
while
we-
your camera's up, why don't we cover you for a minute? While they try and put these back
I
on.
don't really want to make it about me.
Well,
I like covering discussions that happen in speaking school.
look, if you really don't want to be on camera, fine. I just think that you really...
I don't mind. You can talk about what you want to talk about, but
Okay,
personally, I just try
okay,
to.
personally, I'd like to talk about you a bit because I think there are some very good people down here and you're one of the very best, and if that's not realised, it should be.
I
That's
agree.
all.
I'll be back.
Yeah.
Just getting this. Yeah.
As a doctor, you have to be careful. You get caught on this MC come after.
Really?
That's why. That's why I'm
Even now? I can imagine.
Do you know a brother called Nadeem Ali?
No.
Okay, he's an eye specialist. He said he knows you. 'Cause I'm an eye specialist as well. He said he knows you. No?
I know a lot of people,
No,
but I
that's the
forget their
thing.
names.
That's the thing.
I forget their names.
You go to act.